I didn't find out from my parents. I found out from a folded piece of paper that smelled like machine oil and old ink. It was early, too early for summer morning, and the metal shop was already awake. The familiar screech of steel against steel echoed through the open bay doors, sharp and metallic, like a cry that had learned how to work for a living. I stood there with my gloves half on, coffee cooling on the workbench, staring at a document that wasn't meant for my hands. At the top, in bold letters, were the words, "Transfer of ownership." And just like that, something I had given my whole life to slipped out of my hands without a single goodbye. Before that morning, my life had a rhythm. Not an easy one, but a dependable one. The kind you build calluses around. The shop had been in our family for almost 40 years. My father started it when I was still small enough to nap under the welding table, earmuffs crooked over my head, the smell of hot metal and grease sinking into my clothes before I even knew what work meant. By the time I was 13, I could tell the difference between aluminum and steel just by the sound it made when it hit the floor. My brother, Daniel, came later, 8 years younger, softer around the edges. He liked numbers more than noise, liked clean hands and air-conditioned offices. My parents used to joke that I was born holding a wrench, and Daniel was born holding a calculator. Somehow, we both ended up at the shop. I never questioned it. I didn't need to. The shop wasn't just work. It was inheritance, identity, proof that our family knew how to build something solid in a world that kept trying to bend us. I worked beside my father through my 20s, learned the language of deadlines and burnt fingertips, learned how pride could live quietly in doing a job right. When Dad's knees gave out, I stayed late. When orders piled up, I skipped vacations. When customers asked who was really running things now, Dad would nod toward me and say, "That's my oldest. He knows this place better than I do." I held on to those words like a promise. At home, life was simple. My wife, Marlene, had learned to read my silences. Dinner was usually late, sometimes cold, but always waiting. She'd set my plate aside, cover it with foil, kiss my cheek without asking why my eyes looked tired. Our 2 kids grew up thinking the shop was a second home. They drew pictures on scrap metal with chalk while I finished orders, laughing when sparks flew like tiny fireworks. It wasn't perfect. Money was tight some months. My back ached more than it should have. But it was honest. And I believed naively, maybe, that honesty counted for something. The first time something fell off was subtle enough that I brushed it aside. Dad started taking meetings without me. At first, I told myself it was nothing. He'd earned the right to close his office door if he wanted. But then I noticed Daniel's truck parked out front more often. Not in the way of someone stopping by, but like someone who belonged there. Daniel started wearing nicer clothes. Button-down shirts instead of his old hoodies. He asked questions, not about machines or schedules, but about suppliers, taxes, long-term plans. He'd stand a little straighter, speak a little louder, like he was practicing a voice he hadn't used before. One afternoon, I asked him what was going on. "Just helping Mom and Dad think about the future," he said, smiling too quickly. "You know, succession stuff." The word stuck in my chest like a shard. Succession. No one had ever said it out loud before. I waited for my parents to bring it up. Days passed. Weeks. Orders came and went. I kept my head down, told myself not to read into things. I'd spent my life proving myself through work, not conversation. Surely they knew where I stood. Then came the paperwork. It was left on the corner of Dad's desk, half covered by a clipboard, like an afterthought. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a set of invoices. My name wasn't anywhere on the page. Daniel's was.
Sole proprietor.
Effective immediately. My hands started to shake. Not violently, just enough that I had to set the paper down before it betrayed me. The shop noises faded, replaced by a ringing silence that pressed against my ears. I waited until closing time. Dad was wiping his hands with a rag when I stepped into his office. Mom sat beside him, purse already on her lap. Daniel leaned against the filing cabinet, arms crossed, calm as if nothing in the world had shifted. I held up the paper. "What is this?" I asked. No one answered right away. Mom looked at the floor. Dad cleared his throat. Daniel met my eyes and didn't look away. "We were going to tell you," Dad said finally. I laughed once. A short, disbelieving sound that surprised even me. "You already did." The room felt smaller. The walls, once lined with old photos and certificates, suddenly looked like strangers. "You transferred the shop," I said slowly.
To him.
"It made sense," Mom said, her voice careful, practiced. "Daniel understands the financial side. The business is changing. And I don't." I asked. "I've been here every day for 20 years. Dad sighed, rubbing his temple. "You're good with your hands. But this needs a different kind of leadership now." Daniel shifted, uncomfortable, or pretending to be. "It's not like you're losing your job," he said. "You can still work here." That was when it hit me. They hadn't just taken the shop. They decided who I was worth being without it. I folded the paper carefully, placed it back on the desk, and nodded. My voice came out quieter than I felt. "I see." And for the first time in my life, I walked out of that shop without knowing if I'd ever come back the same way again.